One of the big problems in our country right now is the high cost of housing. A second and related problem is that there just isn't enough housing in some of the most desirable places that people really want to live. Neither of those problems can be solved without more housing supply. There's a limited amount of land, but we add human-made rules that dramatically limit how much of that land we can use for housing. And those rules can be how tall you can build, how much of your land you can build on, how many parking spots you need for a building, and all of that has resulted in just much less housing being available, and that's driven up the cost in those places.
Is it a Trojan horse for developers to come in and build?
We are not set up to accommodate this many people this fast.
I say no.
Look, I think there's two reasons that people are opposed to more supply. One is that they don't understand it, and the second is that they do understand it. In the don't understand it category is concerns that somehow when supply goes up, price will go up. When everything we learn in economics is when supply goes up, price goes down. Another one I'd put in that category is a concern that, builders are going to make a profit. Of course they're going to make a profit. All the housing we have around us was built by private companies making a profit. There would basically be nowhere for anyone to live if someone didn't make a profit. But then there's that they do understand it. People may not want the house next door to them that's a nice single-family house with a lawn to be replaced by something that's 5 stories high and has 10 different families in it. I sympathize with that. I certainly have neighbors that don't want to see our neighborhood changed. But ultimately, that type of not in my backyard, NIMBY attitude is, I think, gets in the way of inclusion, gets in the way of opportunity, gets in the way of the society that we should want to build.
Folks of more modest incomes are finding it really hard to remain in the neighborhood. So we're seeing this big housing boom, but people are struggling to find housing opportunities.
They started raising the rents. A lot of people did move out, but I decided after 48 years, I've been here that long, I don't want to leave.
Research has studied the issue of displacement and pretty much finds it's the exact opposite. The way to avoid displacement is to have more housing, and it has 3 effects. First of all, in a lot of jurisdictions, there are requirements that when you build market rate housing, you also have to set aside something like 20% of it for affordable housing. And so you end up with more affordable housing units built. Second of all, some of the new building is not luxury high-rises. It's maybe a triple-decker where 3 families can live in a house that previously only had 1 family, in a neighborhood that's relatively modest. But third, even the luxury housing, the studies show that it leads to a daisy chain. Maybe someone moves out of their house into that luxury housing. The house that they move out of becomes more affordable for someone else, or maybe it gets replaced with something that 2 or 3 families can live in. In my dream approach, you would both have more supply, which means there's more places to live and they're more affordable. But that still would not be enough for families with particularly low incomes. So you would also have housing vouchers that would enable them to afford that housing. Right now we have federal housing vouchers, but they go to about 20% of the people that are eligible, and they're incredibly long waiting lists. For middle-class families, supply is pretty much the only answer. I don't think subsidies really work, and I don't think we can really afford subsidies given the budget constraints. But for lower income households, those 2 approaches really complement each other well. If you want to keep making progress, you can make it at the state level, you can make it on the local level, and you can also have your voice be heard. Right now, City Council is much more likely to hear from somebody who doesn't want building on their block. All the people that do want building, that would live in that new housing, they may not realize it. They may not be there yet. They may not know. They get underrepresented in the process. So trying to speak up for them, make sure that city councils understand all the people that will benefit that they don't hear from on a regular basis is a really important way that anyone can make a difference, even when policymaking in Washington may not be what they want.